As one of the premier sports weeklies in the country, the Sporting News has always devoted a great deal of its space to statistics. That devotion to obscure facts and figures provides a sturdy foundation for Compton New Media's CD-ROM edition of the Multimedia Sporting News Pro Football Guide. The base for this release is the Pro Football Guide that the Sporting News publishes on an annual basis. In the CD-ROM format, there are enough stats available to satisfy any hardcore football junkie. The graphics are well done, and the guide is very easy to move around in. The major drawbacks are the video clips, which are difficult to see because of their poor quality and the small screen on which they're shown, and the pictures of the individual players and coaches accompanying the stats, which are generally of poor quality. The best place to begin with this CD is the stats section. It isn't all-inclusive, since the numbers included run only between the 1970 and 1992 seasons. However, you can rest assured that if something happened during those 23 years, you can find the appropriate stat. Categories available include offense, defense, and kicking. You can call up a particular season or a list of career leaders since the 1970 season for just the NFC, just the AFC, or both. It's a shame that the stats only go back to 1970, since the CD format could offer a treasure trove of information to researchers or serious football fans, including those who absolutely have to know who the 2,773rd player is on the non-kicking scoring list. One hopes that with the large amount of work put into the initial release of the guide behind them, the designers will be able to use their extra time to go even further back into the history of the NFL. The Hall of Fame section includes career highlights and statistical information of all of the Hall's members through the 1992 season. The Players and Coaches section lists all active NFL participants and any player who retired after the 1980 season. Since those lists are so long, a search function, called a filter, is included that allows you to look up a player or player by position, pro team, college team, or statistics. That same thorough approach went into the NFL team section, which allows you to look up an individual team's all-time records by season, coaching records, and first-round draft picks. The team section also lists all of the members of each organization, from the front office down to the trainers in the locker room. Since the guide being reviewed for this episode only went through the 1992 season, the NFL Week in Review section was extremely dated. There was a lot of information available, including brief summaries and box scores from each game, highlights and notes for each week from around the NFL, and standings for each week from the regular season through the playoffs, including the Super Bowl. However, with the information being as old as it was, this section would be of little or no interest to a vast majority of the guide's users. The trivia portion of the guide apparently ranked at the bottom of the designer's priority list, since questions were repeated on a couple of occasions during a 5-minute stay in the section. With all the space needed to store the stats and video clips on the CD, it's understandable that all parts of the guide don't have the same depth of information. However, that doesn't negate the fact that a trivia game quickly becomes boring if you see the same questions on a regular basis. The trivia problem pales in comparison to the low-rent quality of virtually all of the video clips accompanying the player, coach, and team profiles. It's ironic that NFL Films receive credit for providing the footage, since the video falls well below that organization's high standards. Whether the clips were old or new, they failed to convey the sense of awe and excitement one usually feels when watching pro football's greats perform on film. The poor quality of the video may explain why designers opted to use such a small video display screen. Even if the clips were as clear as a bell, it would be difficult to tell with the way they're presented. Not all of the still photos were as bad as the video, but most of them were. Given the overall high quality of the guide's graphics, it's difficult to understand why the pictures were so poor. Since the Sporting News has always relied more on information than presentation, it's not surprising that its multimedia pro football guide performs better when it's standing still than when it's moving. The amount of information available is impressive, and the potential exists for the guide to become the ultimate statistical source for the NFL fanatic who happens to own a CD-ROM once the designers come up with a way to enhance the pictures that accompany the stats.